back in the hands of the people.
Wisconsin.
Let's go get them. Hit the streets.
A battleground state.
We are fed up, and you better get your resume ready.
Where voters take politics seriously.
I don't think you really have a voice unless you vote.
And demand political coverage to match.
Why should the voters in the state believe you?
Your opponent has challenged you to 6 debates. Are you going to meet that challenge?
WISN TV's Commitment 2010 coverage delivered in-depth and insightful political news, helping voters get to know the candidates in local and statewide races.
Now's the moment. Let's go vote.
It's familiar territory for Russ Feingold, asking voters for their support. He says his connection to Wisconsin voters is the reason they've continued to send him to the U.S. Senate.
I still operate and do things the same way based on the promises I made on that garage door, and I will continue to do so if the people of the state want me to.
For more than a quarter century, this has been Ron Johnson's professional home. Packer, the Oshkosh plastics company he runs. A political unknown 6 months ago, Johnson now carries the Republican Party's hope of claiming that Senate seat.
This is not about Ron Johnson wanting to be a U.S. Senator. This is about a guy, just a guy from Oshkosh who's led a very average life, okay, a successful life, but still, involved in everything else that everybody else gets involved.
How do you get past this sentiment out there amongst some in your party who just feel that you have committed the unforgivable sin, that you worked for Democratic Governor Jim Doyle? They cannot get past that. How do you convince them that you're really a Republican and that you're the right choice?
Well, I work for the people of Wisconsin. Mike, I learned so much in that role as Commerce Secretary. I was chosen to be Commerce Secretary because of my business experience, my management experience. I have to ask them, who would they rather have in that role? Somebody who understands business, is a conservative Republican, or somebody that is a Democratic partisan who doesn't understand business?
In Washington, Paul Ryan is in demand. As the Republican House leader on all things budget-related, he's become a political celebrity of sorts, although perhaps a reluctant one.
When you hear the term rising star, what do you think?
I'm surprised at it, number one. I just think I'm doing my job, number two, but I see it as sort of an indictment on the political class. I'm getting all this attention apparently because I've put ideas out there and some solutions to fix these problems that are plaguing. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? I mean, why is it some guy in Wisconsin is getting all this attention for simply doing his job?
We're continuing our look at the state's most competitive congressional races with the Republican candidate in the 3rd Congressional District. Democratic incumbent Ron Kine will face Republican State Senator Dan Kapanke on November 2nd. We talked to Ron Kine last week, and today we're joined by Senator Dan Kapanke, who is at our La Crosse affiliate, WXOW TV.
How are you? I'm Mark Newman. Good to see you. Yeah. Thanks for coming out. Hi, how are you doing? My name is Tom Barrett. I'm running for governor.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Welcome to Portage, about 40 miles north of Madison on the banks of the Wisconsin River.
It's a wonderful small town. Wonderful, very close-knit.
But this 19th century city has suddenly become a critical stop in a 21st century political campaign.
Oh, that's a good spot to start.
Republican Mark Newman has been chatting up voters and small business owners on main streets across the state, and it was no different here in Portage.
As a small business owner, we're going to bring a business perspective to this government. I've basically had it right up to here like so many of the others.
He believes towns like this are where the race will be won or lost.
What is it about Portage that kind of reaches out to you as candidates?
Well, for us, the towns like Portage all across the state of Wisconsin is ground zero for our campaign.
I think places like this are going to decide the election.
Fellow Republican Scott Walker agrees, and just days after Newman's visit, Walker rolled into town, greeting some of the same voters at a local cafe and bringing his brown bag campaign to the workers at one of Portage's leading manufacturing businesses.
They want to know not just that you share the same issues, that you stand where I want you to stand on the issues. They want to know, do you know about my community?
With an open governor's race and 20 open seats in the state legislature, our team of veteran reporters fanned out across Wisconsin to investigate the issues most important to voters.
One hot topic in Wisconsin's race for governor is the high-speed train.
We wondered, politics aside, what a ride on the proposed train would cost. Harry Sater finds the answer might not be what you expect.
This is the picture of passenger trains in Wisconsin right now. There's no service between Milwaukee and Madison, but the high-speed rail proposal promises to change that within 3 years.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to get places faster.
The Wisconsin Department of Transportation estimates a one-way high-speed rail ticket would cost around $30. That's where critics say, hold the train.
Well, the Wisconsin high-speed rail plan is a real expensive turkey. And if you're a rail contractor, you're going to have a good Thanksgiving, but everybody else is going to pay the bill and not get much benefit from it.
12 News obtained a copy of the Wisconsin DOT federal grant application, which estimates one-way tickets to Madison would range from $22 to $33. But the conservative Cato Institute calculates the cost to taxpayers would be much higher, a $68 one-way ticket subsidy, bringing the real cost of a one-way high-speed ticket to nearly $100.
You'll remember that the government approved $800 million in stimulus money for a rail line that connects Milwaukee to Madison. In two towns along the route, there are very different reactions to high-speed rail. Today on Up Front, a tale of two cities, Watertown and Waterloo.
We're ready to go.
In Watertown, there is excitement.
I think it's going to be an economic boon for the community.
The community is ready to welcome high-speed rail to Watertown, a city of 23,000 halfway between Madison and Milwaukee, and poised for growth.
I think that, you know, that it would attract people to maybe move here. Maybe economically it might be feasible for them to move here.
Many members of the Watertown business community say they support the rail project. Watertown already has Amtrak passenger rail coming through daily, and it appears likely to get a stop along the new Milwaukee to Madison rail line. The city even has its depot site picked out, a former grocery store next to the tracks and Highway 26, a main route through Watertown.
We just know that it's going to be an economic development tool for an area of the city that is right in the heart of our economic development plans.
But just 13 miles away in Waterloo, there is concern about the impact high-speed rail will have on this community of 3,200 people.
It's a double-edged impact. It could be a strongly negative impact, or it could be a strongly positive impact.
The rail line runs straight through the south side of Waterloo, with homes and businesses on either side of the tracks.
It's going to have a lot of effect on the property values.
The concerns don't end there. Waterloo is worried there will be road closures, barrier fencing, and possibly safety issues with a busy line they fear will cut their town in half.
The court said the state was wrong to raid the medical malpractice fund to help balance the budget 3 years ago. And now that money, some $200 million, has to be paid back with interest. How will a new governor and a new legislature dig their way out of this hole? And what does this new ruling do to the numbers now? We're asking two members of the legislature's Joint Committee on Finance, State Representative Robin Voss, the Republican from Racine, and committee co-chairman Mark Pocan, the Democrat from Madison, who joined us today from WKOW-TV.
Spring in Pewaukee is more than a choice between fleece or shorts. It's yes or no to expanding the high school, which would also expand property taxes.
It's tough times for everybody right now.
It is, and that's one of the reasons we're taking a look at it now. We have the opportunity to pursue federal stimulus funds, which we wouldn't in the future.
The $16 million referendum on the ballot in April is take two, since the first one failed last fall. In a close vote, voters said no to higher taxes, feeling the pinch of the economy.
I would be in favor of it normally, but with the times the way they are, people out of work, money's just not that readily available, and so I'd have to be against it.
It's a big chunk of change. That's a lot of money. And like I said, I don't want to pay it.
Today on Up Front, we begin with one of the most contentious issues of the current legislative session, which resumes Tuesday. Should farmers in the dairy state be allowed to sell raw milk? In just a minute, we'll discuss the pros and cons of that proposal, but first, a road trip to a Wisconsin farm to learn more about unpasteurized milk and why some consumers are clamoring for it.
We have the hamburger, it's organic ground beef, there's roasts and some steaks.
Dan Sigmund and his family run a small organic food store on their farm just outside Rubicon. Some of the meat comes from their own pasture-fed cows, but not the milk. Sigmund sells his milk to a dairy for pasteurization because state law forbids him from selling unpasteurized milk to consumers.
We've had raw milk our whole life. We've been raised on it, and we don't see a family doctor. And I think that's not just coincidence.
Last month, hundreds of people turned out for a hearing in Eau Claire on a bill to legalize the sale of raw milk.
Many of them say raw milk is healthier because it's richer in enzymes, vitamins, and minerals than pasteurized milk.
People want to be able to consume the healthy food of their choice, and they're not going to let unelected bureaucrats tell them no.
But critics say raw milk poses a potential health risk without pasteurization to kill bacteria. Sigmund acknowledges those concerns but believes the bill's provisions mitigate the risk.
I believe we see the time is here, and it's not the farmer that's pushing it. This is consumer driven.
For more on this issue now, we're joined by State Representative Chris Dano of Trempealeau, the Assembly sponsor of the raw milk bill, and Dr. Barbara Kolb-Jurs, a pediatrician with Aurora Healthcare in Milwaukee. She's representing the Wisconsin Medical Society, which is opposed to the bill.
Midterm elections put 8 congressional seats and 1 U.S. Senate seat in the spotlight, and our coverage examined each and every development.
He is staying out of the race. Wisconsin's former governor, Tommy Thompson, says he will not run for U.S. Senate against incumbent Russ Feingold. Thompson spoke at a Tea Party rally outside of the state capitol. Moments before he addressed the crowd, he spoke with our Kent Wainscott.
You've made up your mind?
Yeah, I have. Well, you know, I wanted to run, there's no question, but my family is, you know, is very important, and I could not run without the support of the family.
Commitment 2010 coverage now. A new candidate is expected to enter the race for U.S. Senate tomorrow. Oshkosh businessman Ron Johnson will be the 4th Republican in that race.
A powerful congressman from Wisconsin says he's retiring. Congressman Dave Obey decided that after 41 years in Congress, he's ready to step down. As chairman of the powerful House Appropriations Committee, Obey has funneled money to countless state projects over the years. In an exclusive one-on-one interview with 12 News, Obey talked about that perk.
One of your jobs is to help your district, and I've been lucky because I've been on a committee that enables me to do that, and so that's been our principal focus.
Is it going to be a little tougher for Wisconsin to get the same amount of assistance without you here now?
I think so.
Ashland County DA Sean Duffy is the likely GOP candidate. During an interview over Skype, Duffy says that the threat of losing may have played a role in Obey stepping down.
Dave Obey had a stranglehold on this seat. Now there's going to be, you know, a great debate, a great conversation here, and people will have a real choice.
State lawmaker from Stevens Point is the Democratic favorite now to run for Obey's 7th District congressional seat. But how do you assemble a winning campaign in just 6 months? Well, today we'll ask State Senator Julie Lassa, who is taking on that challenge. Thanks very much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let me ask you the first question, and that is this something you've always thought about doing, or is it something that you were persuaded to do by members of the Democratic Party, Congressman Obey? Give us a sense.
Well, it was not how I anticipated spending my summer and fall of this year campaigning for Congress.
You said that you wanted to be perceived as the underdog in this race. You have held this office for 18 years. You have millions of dollars at your disposal. And you are facing an opponent who last year at this time was a political unknown. How can you possibly be perceived as the underdog?
Well, most people do see me that way at this point because Mr. Johnson has opened up his pockets and is going to spend, is obviously spending more money than I am right now on television ads.
Several of those seats, the contested ones, are right here in Wisconsin. The 8th congressional district race in northeast Wisconsin has Democratic incumbent Steve Kagan trying to fend off a challenge from Republican Reed Ribble. Kagan, a doctor from Appleton, has been a top GOP target since he was first elected 4 years ago. Now, recently, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee canceled some advertising in the Green Bay market. So, is that a sign Kagan is in trouble, or is there more to it than that? Today, we're asking Congressman Steve Kagan, who joins us from our affiliate, WFRV-TV. Dr. Kagan, thanks very much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. A very good morning to you and to your listeners.
Thanks for joining us. Let me begin by asking a very simple question. Senator Russ Feingold, in his bid for re-election, has often referred to himself as the underdog in the race. How do you view yourself in your race?
Well, I look at it this way. I'm a hard worker. I'm honest. I'm someone who can't be bought. So in this district, that's a pretty good moniker to have.
On a daily basis, in the 30 days leading up to the primary and general elections, our station dedicated 10 minutes of coverage to news from the campaign trail, covering the entire spectrum of political news.
Well, Kent, there were thousands of people gathered here. The estimates vary. The Capitol Police put it at about 4,500 people. Regardless of the number, though, they were here to hear about a dozen speakers talking about change, calling for change both in Washington and here in Madison.
And the message we want to deliver is November is coming.
Filling a corner of Capitol Square over the lunch hour, the 60,000-strong Americans for Prosperity rallied support at the so-called Taxpayer Tea Party.
A wildfire is spreading across this country. Contagious it is as Americans wake up and realize that our generation may be responsible for the complete demise of all that we hold dear.
A popular theme, opposition to the Obama health care plan. And on this day, above all others, taxation.
We are now 1 month from Election Day, and campaigns are spending millions of dollars more now than the last midterm elections. As 12 News' Marianne Lyles reports, there's debate about if that money is hurting the campaigns.
Ads backed by third parties were part of the discussion at today's On the Issues event with Mike Goucher.
I compare campaign finance reform to playing a game of whack-a-mole where there's...
Rick Essenberg is a law professor here at Marquette University. Jay Heck is the director of Common Cause Wisconsin, which has a focus on campaign finance. The two don't see eye to eye on what's become of this pricey election.
The discourse is no longer civil, and I think the big losers are voters who are generally turned off by this sort of negativity and all of the money, most of it special interest money, being spent in these elections.
The fact that we spend, whatever it turns out to be, 10% of, what companies spend promoting Cheetos and automobiles on political advertising doesn't offend me at all.
With just 10 days left before voters head to the polls, Tom Barrett was the first to bring the abortion issue into the race with an ad yesterday. Scott Walker countered today, and in each case, the candidates are trying to label their opponent as extreme.
Our teenage daughter was attacked and brutally raped.
The Barrett ad features the parents of a teenage rape victim and claims Scott Walker wants to make abortion illegal even in cases of rape or to protect the life of a mother, and then calls Walker extreme.
Who is Scott Walker to play God with our family? I just think Scott Walker is too extreme for Wisconsin.
Walker today launched a counterattack ad featuring his wife, Tonette.
But for Tom Barrett to lie about my husband's compassion for victims is just wrong.
Saying her husband has been a strong advocate for victims, the ad then turns the extreme label around on Barrett.
It's really Tom Barrett who's extreme. Barrett supports taxpayer funding for abortion.
Barrett today says he raised the issue because it's important to many voters.
People need to know where we stand on a wide range of issues, including some of the issues that affect women's ability to make their own decisions.
While Walker claims Barrett is just trying to divert attention from other issues.
But the bottom line is he's running that ad because he wants desperately to get away from the discussion of jobs and the economy.
At first glance, the Republican candidates for governor appear to be missing.
Look at all this room at the bottom. They could have had Democrat, Republican, and the rest, right? There's plenty of room.
The county election official who designed the ballot said it's printed that way because there isn't empty space in some wards where there are more candidates listed. The Republican gubernatorial candidates aren't missing, they're below the Democrats. The Republicans are in the same spot on all ballots to save tax dollars. It follows Wisconsin guidelines and was approved by the state, which says it didn't realize it would confuse voters like Laurel McDonald.
Thanks, Brendan. Down to the wire. State projections have half of the state's voting population turning out for this election.
That's nearly 2.2 million people. Patrick Palantonio shows us how thousands of voters are beating the rush.
The election is what draws them to downtown Milwaukee, a constant stream of people.
Print your name and your address and your date of birth.
Making their mark at the municipal building.
Well, to me, education and health care. I'm really voting for that.
Whatever their reason, all these people are here to vote early.
Why not come in tomorrow?
Because the crowds and the paperwork involved, we should have done this a week or two ago, but...
Instead, they showed up on the final day of absentee voting to cast their ballot, something thousands of people ahead of them have been doing for weeks. Already in this election, the city has seen 5,000 more absentee voters than the last midterm election in 2006. Now it's on to Tuesday. State election officials are estimating turnout for this election to hit about 50%. In Milwaukee, the city is preparing for 55 to 60% voter turnout.
people should make sure they're going to the right polling site. Oftentimes people that are new to the area or whatever end up at the wrong polling site.
It's one of the issues the City Election Commission sees on Election Day. Another, voters who are registering at the polls show up without the correct documentation. To do so, you'll need proper proof of residence, like a utility bill or a paycheck stub.
If you have a Wisconsin driver's license, you must provide that number on Election Day.
And on this ballot, you can vote straight party or cross over and vote for candidates from different parties. In Milwaukee, Patrick Paolantonio, WISN 12 News.
Remember, no campaign materials like shirts, hats, or buttons are allowed at the polls. To find out where to vote, you can go to our website, WISN.com.
Our weekly statewide public affairs show, Up Front with Mike Goucher, provided our most comprehensive forum for in-depth conversations with candidates, probing interviews on issues, and thoughtful analysis.
Democrats hold a narrow 18-15 edge in the Senate, and Republicans have targeted a handful of seats they hope to pick up to win control. Those districts include the 21st in Racine and the 23rd and 31st districts in western Wisconsin. But the Republicans' #1 pickup target this year is the 5th Senate District, which includes parts of Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, West Allis, and State Fair Park. The race pits Democratic incumbent Jim Sullivan against Republican Representative Leah Vukmir. WisPolitics.com reports the 5th Senate District race is expected to be the biggest spending legislative race this year. We have invited Senator Jim Sullivan and Representative Leah Vukmir to State Fair today for their first joint television appearance to the campaign. And thanks to both of you for being with us today. We appreciate it. It was 1 year ago this weekend that Congress passed the stimulus bill. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was $787 billion of spending and tax credits aimed at boosting the U.S. economy. Critics say the stimulus was a flop filled with pork barrel spending. But the Obama administration said late last week that it's created or saved 2 million jobs and helped stabilize the economy. So how do we evaluate it? Today we've asked an economist and academic to grade the stimulus. Mike Knetter is dean of the UW-Madison School of Business. He holds a PhD in economics and served on the President's Council of Economic Advisors for Presidents George Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton. Dean Knetter, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you again.
Pleasure to be here.
I want to do something that we hope will be interesting to our viewers here. We're going to take components of the stimulus plan, the Recovery Act, break them down and have you give them individual grades, and then we'll have an overall grade for the stimulus at the end of this. Consider this timeline. Johnson formally announced his candidacy just 2 weeks ago. Days later, at the state Republican convention, fellow candidate Dick Leinenkugel dropped out of the race, and the convention endorsed Johnson. Then, late last week, businessman Terrence Wall dropped out of the race. Now, some conservative commentators, including syndicated columnist George Will, are taking note. Will wrote of Johnson, "This is what the Tea Party looks like." But meteors, as we know, can flame out. So how does a political newcomer avoid that fate? And can he keep this momentum going to win his party's primary and unseat Democratic incumbent Russ Feingold in November? Today, we're asking Republican Senate candidate Ron Johnson. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
The bill known as the Clean Energy Jobs Act sets big goals for boosting the use of renewable energy in Wisconsin. It would require that 25% of the state's energy come from renewable sources by 2025. But it's also been intensely criticized. Even some prominent Democrats have said it needs to be changed. Today on Upfront, we're looking at the future of the Clean Energy Jobs Act. How might it change? And can Democrats muster enough votes to pass it with the clock ticking on the legislative session? We're asking two state lawmakers. Senator Mark Miller, the Democrat from Monona, is a co-sponsor of the bill. Senator Ted Canavas, the Republican from Brookfield, has called it a $15 billion utility rate hike.
The following is a special presentation.
In a first-of-its-kind initiative, WISN TV created an innovative and original format to bring voters up front with candidates in the Upfront Town Hall Challenge.
Wisconsin's voice will help shape the nation's agenda. Your vote on November 2nd will decide who will represent our state on the national stage. Tonight, in their final face-to-face appearance before Election Day, Democratic incumbent Russ Feingold and Republican challenger Ron Johnson join Mike Goucher for a conversation with Wisconsin. They'll take questions from citizen groups in Green Bay, La Crosse, Madison, Eau Claire, Wausau, and Milwaukee. It's all part of the Upfront Town Hall Challenge. Now from Eckstein Hall, the new home of Marquette University Law School in Milwaukee. Tonight's moderator, 12 News Upfront anchor, Mike Goucher.
And hello again, everyone, and welcome to Eckstein Hall at Marquette University Law School. I'm Mike Goucher. I'm a journalist who works here at the law school exploring public policy issues. I'm also the host of the statewide public affairs television program, Up Front. This is the third and final in our series of conversations with candidates for statewide office this year. In August, we hosted the Republican candidates in the gubernatorial primary. Last week, it was the party nominees in the race for governor. And tonight, it's the candidates for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin. With me at the table tonight are the Democratic incumbent, Senator Russ Feingold, and his Republican challenger, Oshkosh businessman Ron Johnson. A few words about the format tonight. I'll be asking the candidates questions for roughly the first 15 minutes or so in a free-flowing conversation. And then we'll begin taking questions from citizen groups around the state. These citizens were recruited based on their participation in their local communities. We found them by reading letters to the editor, minutes of school board, township, and city council meetings. They are Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, independents, and Tea Party members. Their assignment was to represent Wisconsin and come up with several questions they want answered, questions they all agreed on. And we want to thank them for their time and participation in advance. Now the rules, and they're pretty simple. This is a conversation. The viewers tell us they want to hear more than talking points, more than sound bites or slogans. We have got 90 minutes tonight, but believe me, the time will go by quickly. So we're asking the candidates to answer questions as directly and concisely as possible. At times, I may jump in to follow up or simply move on. The candidates can also speak to each other directly. Although again, I'll be playing the role of traffic cop. Our goal is to have the candidates address the issues the citizens groups raise and hear more about how they would tackle some of the country's toughest challenges. There are no opening statements tonight, but each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement, and we ask the audience to please refrain from any applause until then. We tossed a coin for the order of questioning, and Mr. Johnson will go first. And actually, it's the same question to both of you, because I thought we would begin our conversation tonight by trying to get a better sense of your worldview, what you think of the current state of affairs in this country. Mr. Johnson, let me begin by asking you this. What do you think poses the greatest threat to our nation at this moment in its history?
I would say there's really no doubt about it. It's the out-of-control spending and debt that we're racking up in this country. And certainly as I'm traveling around the state of Wisconsin, that is the issue. Certainly it's the economy and jobs. I mean, obviously we've got to get this economy moving. We've got to start creating jobs. But people understand that racking up deficits of $1.4 trillion over the last 2 years, over $3 trillion have been added to the debt in just the last 3 years. And Senator Feingold has voted for all that. They understand that is simply unsustainable. And of course, they take a look and they see Greece. Now they're watching France. They understand that we're on that same path, and we better do something about it. We better bring this to a grinding halt.
Senator Feingold, what do you think poses the greatest threat?
Well, I think it's more complicated than that. Of course, the debt is one of the biggest issues. That's why I have worked so hard to reduce the debt and the deficit, and successfully did so with President Clinton and Republicans in the 1990s, despite Mr. Johnson's ad, which is absolutely false. We actually got that done. But there are more challenges. This challenge of jobs is real. We can't just solve it by cutting spending. We have to also have creative ways to promote job creation, which a jobs tax credit would do. And frankly, there's an international situation out there that my opponent simply doesn't talk about, but one of the greatest threats we have is that Al-Qaeda attacked us and has not been brought under control, and we have problems with Iran. So truthfully, our challenges are multiple.
What I want to do now is weave in our citizen groups, because they have questions they would like to direct to the two of you. And we're going to begin tonight with Pam Warnke at WAOW-TV in Wausau. And this is, I think, an extension of the conversation we've been having. Pam, why don't you go ahead with your group's question?
It is an extension of what you've been talking about, Mike. John Fisher is here from Wausau, and this is a question that could make or break it for him. John, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Our question, what role, if any, do you feel federal housing policy played in the economic collapse? And what role, if any, do you feel federal housing policy should play in the economic recovery?
Mr. Johnson, we'll begin with you.
Congress's reaction to this thing was a 2,300-page bill that didn't even address the problems of Fannie and Freddie, and they certainly didn't address the too big to fail.
Well, we agree.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that when we had an entity called Big Bank, there was a term too big to fail. Regulation already failed.
Let me go back to Pam. Pam, did they get the answers they were looking for?
Well, let me ask John, who asked the question. Are they answering your question?
They answered the first part, but the second part, which is more important, is does housing policy play a role in the recovery?
WISN TV leading the way with important political coverage, proving our commitment to viewers.